Good evening and welcome to our second episode of Unspun. I'm your host, Mark Bassant. Often branded as spin doctors, journalists are sometimes accused of twisting the facts. We want to guarantee you that we'll unspin that theory. Over the next hour, this comprehensive show will bring you up to speed with the stories that matter the most to you, our viewers. We're digging deep to bring you investigative and special reports and to always ensure it's all factual. In this episode, we're investigating a $500,000 payment made to Watson Duke, who promised to step down from the PSA as president in November 2019. It was on that premise he was paid a substantial sum. Unbelievably, Duke never stepped down but instead ran for a new term, and now questions are being asked as to why he hasn't returned the money. You don't want to miss Living to Die, a special report on why 30 years later, cancer patients are still in dire need of medical treatment in this country, even as a top-class oncology center had been promised to the nation. And we'll also delve into the sporting world, where it seems this country has a whole lot of stadia, but are we capable of the upkeep of these facilities? And a whole lot more. For years, PSA President Watson Duke has been a controversial figure. The financial affairs of the PSA has over the years come into question. During the run-up to the last election in November 2019, many had hinted about a $500,000 pension payment Duke was given, on the premise that he was resigning from the PSA and wasn't contesting that election. While many failed to give the actual details of Duke's payout and what really went down, Unspun did some investigating. PSA President Watson Duke has always professed to be a man for the people, defending thousands of workers in this country. He's traditionally captured through the lens of media cameras, donning expensive suits when he's at press conferences, fighting court battles, or on other PSA business. His intent to many seems real. But over the last few months, his tenure as PSA president, spanning 12 years, is now coming under intense scrutiny. The fact that his wife's company, Blackstone Engineering Technologies, benefited from multi-million-dollar contracts from WASA has not helped his cause. Behind the doors of the PSA, things are unhinging, and questions are being asked about alleged financial irregularities. Duke is now being called upon to open his mouth on the issue. One of the glaring financial irregularities his rivals spewed about in the run-up to the PSA November 2019 elections occurred after Duke made his intent crystal clear back in September that year, that he was finally severing ties with the PSA to pursue a political career.
I have reached a point where, in my career as a PSA president, where I'll be leaving the PSA, obviously. Alright? I'll be leaving the PSA this year, November 30th. November 30th would be my last working day as the president of the PSA. I want to represent a serious-minded people. I just told you my story in a capsule that I spent over $500,000 mortgaging my house to defend a $50 membership. Some of them dropped out of the union, saying the union never do anything for them. I am looking to leave the PSA. And when I make up my mind to leave, nobody could get me to come back. Nobody.
That announcement seemingly cleared the way for the PSA to pay Duke more than $500,000 as part of a pension payment. But there was a troubling issue that upset the apple cart that many weren't willing to fully ventilate. Duke's promise of stepping down as PSA president in November 2019 never materialized, and yet still, quite astonishingly, PSA cleared the payment of close to $521,000. Then acting PSA President Ian Marie, in an interview several days ago, confirmed that Duke received the money in 3 tranches, which was paid out in 3 separate checks. Even the PSA minutes of September 2019 obtained by Unspun not only mentioned the payments, but serious concerns were raised in relation to the exorbitant payments to Duke. The minutes stated under accounts payable, this amount is unusually high this month as it includes the balance of outstanding pension to Watson Duke, $347,000, and billing insurance of $177,000. The minutes also spoke to staggering losses of the PSA in 2019 up to September of over $1 million. This was in fact 5 times the losses of the year to date for the PSA in 2018, which was a meager $270,000. They surmised this deficit is as a result of unusual expenditure within the month of September 2019. These include the final salary arrears payment to staff totaling $588,000, billing insurance of $177,000, and the pension to the president of $521,000. But despite the black and white of the PSA minutes, the matters raised within it, Marie dismissed the payment as that of a pension.
A lot of people making this payment out to be an actual pension of some sort. But there's an arrangement in the PSA when you're out on union duties from your service or your job, that in order to preserve your service while you're away from the job, you have to remit its 25% notional salary to whatever is your pension arrangement. So if there's a fixed pension plan, the PSA will remit that certain amount of money, that 25% notional salary, to the pension plan. In the case of the civil service, they will remit it to the Treasury.
And while Marie sought to defend Duke's payment in some measure, he still could not quite explain why Duke hadn't conformed to the prerequisite of handing in a resignation letter to the PSA's General Counsel, of which Marie was part of then, before giving the payment a green light. Whether it be a notional salary or a pension, the fact is that the person must step down. Did you all receive a resignation letter from Mr. Duke indicating after that announcement that he was stepping down actively as the PSA President come November 30th, 2019? Did you all receive a letter?
No, I would have received no such letter from the President on resignation. He would have made a public announcement that he was resigning, but he basically reneged on that announcement.
Marie seemed to be stumped. Insiders and former executive members gave a differing view of Marie, stating that whether the pension is paid, a pension or notional salary, they're only entitled to such only if they demit office. But Duke never did. A man who worked under Duke as the General Secretary, Oral Saunders, before he later resigned from his position and exposed Duke's credit card spending, said he had asked numerous questions of Marie about Duke's pension payments.
Now, on the surface of it, it sounds all good. However, when I challenged the individual, as in, was a resignation letter presented to the General Counsel, the individual told me no, they didn't get a letter. Additionally, I would have requested from him if there was a letter from WASA, which was the employer of Mr. Duke, and he continues to be, his substantive post is in WASA. So I had asked if there was a letter from HR indicating, well, what were his superannuation benefits that he would have accumulated. So that way the General Counsel, being the finance body, would have had a clear indication, a clear idea as in how much money really was entitled to Mr. Duke. Unfortunately, based on the PSA's documents, at the time, none of those issues were presented. And I became extremely concerned because I knew on the surface of it, it would have violated the very constitution of the PSA that we all are members and we are supposed to follow through on. And not only that too, but even in the wider context, the public service, someone cannot leave the public service, receive a payment for leaving and then return. It is unethical, it is illegal, it just simply cannot happen in the public service. And the PSA, our rules, in essence, is really predicated upon that.
So just walk us through what the PSA, the Constitution of the PSA Act speaks to when an officer has decided to resign or to leave the PSA.
Wonderful. Now I'm reading from the Constitution of the PSA. So Rule 102 indicates that where a person ceases to be an officer of the association in accordance with the provisions of Rule 101.2 above, he shall be entitled to either A, opt in writing to leave the service of the association immediately, in which event he shall become entitled to. So it's only when you would have put this thing, formalized your decision, could this actually start to take place here. So you would be entitled to compensation for all vacation leave due to him or her, calculated on the basis of his or her existing salary and allowances. So that's pretty straightforward. 2, the payment of any superannuation benefits to which he or she was entitled under his or her employment with the association. And 3, the payment of all salary and allowances accruing on the date he or she shall leave the service of the association. B, opt in writing once again to proceed on any leave, because sometimes when you leave a job, you decide that you are leaving, you would have had vacation leave inside. So this is the other option that they give you. Opt in writing to proceed on any leave to which he or she is entitled, and at the expiration of which his or her employment with the association shall cease.
PSA insiders and Saunders claimed that Duke, even before announcing his resignation, had been paid the first tranche of his monies.
Actually, the first tranche would have already been paid the previous month, which is also inconsistent with the PSA's constitution in terms of how a president and how an executive is supposed to function. They are supposed to come and present their information or their requests to the council, and the council deliberate on it, and based on a majority vote, then they would have disbursed the funds. But based on the PSA's document, that did not take place. They actually began payment prior to the actual General Council meeting, and based on their documents, that payment began in the month before, which was actually September of 2019.
But Marie, who was the acting president that day, with Duke strangely absent, rebutted the claim that the General Council approved Duke's payments.
The General Council did not approve that payment to Mr. Duke. That payment is a payment that is due to all officers, if they so choose, who would have served in the public service. All the past officers that would have served in the PSA, right, would have collected that money if they so choose, or they allow the PSA to remit it to either the Treasury or their respective pension accounts.
In fact, during the first General Council meeting in January 2020, a member, according to the minutes, was seeking clarification on her understanding of notional salary, and she said she believed that the notional salary must be paid only when an officer demits office. The question was directed to the sitting chairman, Watson Duke, who merely asked the member to show which law speaks to her concern. On the record, she referred to page 42, section 102 of the PSA Constitution. Duke never offered a response. The messy financial affair prompted Saunders to file an official police report to the fraud squad in November 2019. He said they recently contacted him for further clarity, and he cooperated.
We are simply seeking clarification on, was that money improperly given out? That is all we need to find out. If it is that it was done correctly and above board, well, we are all happy. But the question is, what if it is not? That is cause for concern.
Former First Vice President Ian Murray said if the police came knocking on his door, he was ready to assist.
I have absolutely no fear if it comes to me, right? I have absolutely no fear for the police. I have never had any altercations with the police in any way. I've tried to live my life a particular way. I've been a civil servant for the past 38 years, and I don't intend to do anything out of the way to destroy my reputation as an individual.
So you're willing to cooperate if they come to you?
If the police come to me, I fully cooperate. I will produce whatever information that I have to them. I have no fear for the police.
For close to a week and a half, we tried to ask Duke to explain this $500,000 payment. When we found out he was at a joint unions meeting 2 Tuesdays ago, we asked senior reporter Otto Carrington to inquire about the $500,000 pension payment. This was Duke's laconic response.
No, I can't respond to that today. Not today. Trust me.
In fact, Carrington had even indicated to him prior to the union meeting his intentions to get his answer, but Duke seemed intent on not speaking to us privately.
There's no personal interviews. You want that? There's no personal interviews. Well, I'm not talking people thing now.
Duke in fact told the reporter to come to his office the following day. We made calls to him and left voice messages since Thursday, March 11th, and followed it up with sending him several questions via WhatsApp over the next few days. On Monday, March 15th, we made a call to him and he ended the call. He later asking us to send him a text message. We obliged and sent him the same questions we had sent days earlier, but still hadn't received a response. The PSA's membership are still waiting for the answers to this alleged financial irregularity. Over to you, Mr. Duke. Don't go anywhere. Up next on Unspun, we'll explore the people who are living to die. Welcome back to Unspun. Cancer is one of the top causes of death in this country. And here in Trinidad, cancer patients and their families face huge struggles to cope with when a loved one is diagnosed with a potentially deadly disease. Senior reporter Shaliza Hassanali explores the hardships of coping with cancer and brings us full circle with the realities that cancer patients have to face. Here's her special report, Living to Die.
Every cancer survivor has a story, one filled with hope, courage, agony, and fear. These survivors have many things in common, but no two journeys are the same. And as one cancer survivor described it, her prognosis meant she was only living to die. When Mark Bassant was diagnosed with leukemia in 2015, she reflected on the anguish her brother endured before dying of cancer. She did not want to face the same fate.
And I truly love my family, my grandchildren and my husband. Is the world to me, and I couldn't put them through that pain. To look at me every day in the hospital, just living to die. When I got the news that it's cancer, I say I'm only living now to die.
Hiding the heartbreaking news from her family, Bachoo did the unimaginable, which to this day she asks God for forgiveness.
I did the most terrible thing to myself. I took out a bag of sleeping medication, and I'm certain that there was more than 30 of them in the bottle. I prayed and I asked God to make a place for me with Him, because I thought I was going to die. Now I'm going to take the easy way out. I'm going to save my family the trouble of seeing me suffer.
Bachoo's attempt failed. Days later, she awoke at the intensive care unit of the Sangre Grande Hospital, where she underwent 4 months of treatment. The medication she required was unavailable at the hospital. She also had to pay for scans and blood tests.
One of the pills was $82 for one, and I had to take 13 a day. I had to take these medications for at least 2.5 months.
For Bachoo, the road to recovery crippled her mentally and financially.
If you don't have financial support, you might as well be dead.
In 3 months, Bachoo transformed from a robust 140-pound woman to almost skin and bones, while her hair fell off, eyes sunk further in, and her fingernails turned black, making her unrecognizable. But she has lived to tell her story. In 2002, then Prime Minister Patrick Manning promised a National Oncology Center as a main treatment facility for cancer. The cost of construction, initially estimated at $144 million, was put at $800 million in 2012. After spending $300 million on a foundation, the center's contract was terminated in 2018. While cancer treatment is offered at a few public hospitals, the National Radiotherapy Center in St. James handles the bulk of cancer patients. Cancer is the second leading cause of death in Trinidad. Denise Bassant knows what it is like to lose a loved one to cancer. Her pain has been never-ending. Last January, shockwaves rippled through Bassant's family when her 29-year-old son, Stefan, was diagnosed with leukemia. Bassant remembered her son's initial reaction to the devastating news.
He always said to me, "Mom, I can handle anything. Once is not cancer."
Stefan was admitted at the San Fernando General Hospital, but little could have been done medically for him.
They did not have blood products to support the chemo. They did not have the medication to support his type of leukemia. So there was nothing here for him, nothing.
Desperation set in. He was taken to Cuba for treatment and returned home in good health. But after 3 weeks, the unexpected happened.
He got a relapse, waiting here to get into the San Fernando General Hospital.
The wait seemed like eternity as Stefan fought for survival.
The doctor called and said, "There's no room at the hospital. Someone is still occupying the room, so he can't come in."
When Stefan was finally warded, his worst fear was realized. The cancer had returned. This pushed Stefan to seek treatment at a private hospital, where he found out he had weeks to live.
There's nothing. I prayed. I begged God in languages and things that I've never prayed before. It was a living nightmare because it's difficult to see a child in that position, and he's feeling helpless because that's what the situation seems to be. You can't leave the country, it's COVID, the borders are closed.
She had spent $500,000 to save her son's life.
It didn't last too long after. He died, me holding him. That's how he passed. He died with me. He died in my arms.
Last November, Shavana Boodoo's world was turned upside down after being diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Her family had to take decisive action, either go to a public or private hospital.
The horror stories I hear about the public health care, my family and I just didn't want to take that risk of having to wait longer than was necessary to get the surgery done, because with cancer, time is of the essence.
This choice came with a heavy price for Boodoo's family.
Me and my husband, our personal savings, we had to dip into that, so there's setbacks as far as our future goals that we had, because we have to take money out of our own, pockets to do this.
The cost to remove the right side of Boodoo's thyroid was $45,000, which had to be paid upfront. But upon completion of the operation, the price jumped to $75,000, as Boodoo's entire thyroid had to be removed. Boodoo spent more than $100,000 in medical costs. To this day, Boodoo's pockets are still heavy in debt. Joycelyn Hanif is another cancer survivor who is filled with determination, resilience, and courage. Between 2011 and 2020, Hanif has battled breast and bone cancers. Last Wednesday, a third discovery was made. Doctors found a mass on her ovary, which she hid from her children.
I told 2 friends, and they say, "You don't think you should tell your children?" I said, "No, not as yet."
Hanif had to muster the courage to break the news. Having dodged 2 bullets, with a third on the way, Hanif has put her trust in doctors and nurses at the Sangre Grande Hospital.
I pray every morning. At 3 I wake up, and I pray every morning. And I think that is what helped me. And I go to church. I go to the Presbyterian church. And before, I want to tell you this, that I never believed that there is a God. I will tell you this in my younger days.
Now her faith seems to be fading.
Next month I'll be 82. And as I say, right now I feel I should go. I had enough for the 82 years. It was not bed of roses. I wouldn't say it was a bed of roses. But illnesses, I had over 10 surgeries. More than 10 surgeries already in my life.
79-year-old musician and cultural icon Roy Cape offered high praises for healthcare providers who held his hands and provided words of comfort when he was at his lowest ebb. A tingling feeling on the left side of his waist led Cape to have a PSA test done in 2013, which placed him at a stage 3 category of prostate cancer. Despite hearing negative stories about the National Radiotherapy Center in St. James, Cape chose to go there for treatment.
And from the time we reached there, there's people and you could see in their faces they need care and help them.
Cape admitted that the task to deal with the growing number of cancer patients is tremendous. The wait is long and sometimes frustrating, but the love they share with each other keeps their spirit alive.
We met people. We were all going through the thing in different stages. And we ended up like a family.
In the face of adversities, Cape has learned one thing.
We have ourselves, our people. We have to have much more caring and feeling for each other then.
Chairman of the Trinidad and Tobago Cancer Society, Dr. Asante Leblanc, expressed worry that cancer cases continue to rise.
From our last set of statistics to now, we didn't see what we wanted to see, which is a decrease.
Dr. Leblanc believes our country lacks a centralized oncology unit.
An oncology unit, to my mind, at a national level, allows for an amazing coordination of all of the treatment strategies that we use now in modern day for cancer. An oncology unit, national oncology unit in Trinidad and Tobago, will not only serve Trinidad and Tobago, but it will serve the Caribbean. And I think that's important.
The increase has been draining the health ministry's budget.
There's much more work to be done. But when you think of how much it costs to treat one cancer patient, just one, the millions of dollars for one patient, this is why the Trinidad and Tobago Cancer Society is promoting prevention, education, and screening. Because if we get early detection, we will spend much less money and we will save lives.
Dr. Leblanc said the health sector will always face shortages of drugs, malfunction in machines, while healthcare providers become overworked and overwhelmed.
Yes, there are cracks in the system. Yes, there are slips in the system. There's no doubt. There's no system here that's perfect. But I can tell you honestly, they have improved and they're trying.
While some patients wait hours for treatment and others die seeking care, this should not be ignored.
When I hear of those stories, I'm saddened. I think we have to be our brother's keeper. I think we have to have a control and quality control checklist. I think there's more to be done when it comes to how that is happening. So if you hear a story like that, we shouldn't just jump and say, oh gosh, well, it's public. We need to say, how did this happen? It needs to be investigated properly. It needs to be seen, where did this happen? Because sometimes it may not be what we think it is. But I do note that sometimes you wonder when you hear these stories of lack of this and lack of that, you know.
Dr. Kavi Kapildev, one of the country's leading oncologists, admitted there are approximately 4,000 new cancer cases each year. 1,500 are picked up at the National Radiotherapy Center, while Dr. Kapildev treats between 6 to 7 new patients weekly. Such an increase comes with a heavy price.
Let's say that patient has what's called a HER2 positive breast cancer, meaning that there's a growth factor receptor that you can target with a drug called trastuzumab, which is available in the public service at St. James, San Fernando, Tobago Oncology Clinic, San Grande, and that person gets a year of that treatment. That alone, that one drug, is going to cross $100,000 in terms of the cost to the taxpayer.
Dr. Kapildev admitted that bone marrow transplantation, stereotactic radiotherapy, and stem cell transplantation are not performed locally. The cost of a bone marrow transplant can probably kill you faster than the disease.
If, for example, somebody has relapsed lymphoma and the treatment for that is, say, marrow transplantation, they will have to look at whether they're able to fund that in Cuba or in the US or in Colombia. And then cost can become very much an issue.
What is the cost of such a procedure abroad?
In the States, that can hit $200,000 US and more.
Dr. Kapildev said among the areas we need to improve on are machines for blood separators, harvesting blood components, stem cells for infusion, and strengthened facilities for isolation rooms and trained staff. Perhaps there's hope on the horizon.
Keep it locked. After the break on Unspun, we sit with a grieving mother who is seeking the answers to her daughter's disappearance. Welcome back to Unspun. August 20th, 2019 is a date Annette Filbert will never forget. That morning, her daughter Shanice Cooper, then 7 months pregnant, left her Belmont home for work. More than a year and a half later, she's still missing. Without her only child, Annette is a shell of her former self, broken and consumed by grief. Shanice's family is convinced that a male friend of hers is responsible. But with insufficient evidence, the suspect walked free after police interviewed him. The investigation into her disappearance has gone cold. Ms. Filbert is just one of hundreds of people with missing relatives across the country. Between 2010 and 2019 alone, there were 8,383 missing persons reports. If you've ever wondered what it's like to have a missing loved one, this is a glimpse of that agony.
I just feel so terrible. I still can't come to terms. My name is Annette Filbert and Shanice Cooper is my only child.
So Ms. Filbert, how long has it been since you've seen Shanice? Tell me a little bit about that day.
It's a year and about 6 or 7 months.
And do you remember the last day you saw her? Tell me a little bit about that day.
Well, it was about 6:30 in the morning. I was still lying in bed and she came and said she was leaving to go to work. That was on the 28th of August, 2019. And since that, I haven't seen her or heard anything.
What's that been like? What's that been, that search for answers, that wait? What has that been like for you?
It kind of depressing, and it hard because I'm not getting any answers.
How do you think the police investigation into Shanice has been handled?
I don't think it has been handled well at all. And the last time I got information, all what has been said, like another police came on the case and everything was retracted. And now when you're calling them, there's no lead, no new information, so they're not divulging any information or nothing at all.
How would you say your life has changed since the day that Shanice went missing?
Well, to tell you the truth, since Shanice went missing, my whole body just went in a shock. And I haven't recovered since. And it's very painful because sometimes I don't even know how to think. I don't know how to feel. I don't know what to do, where to go. And I'm not getting any answers. So it's very, very painful. And it's heart-rendering because it's like anywhere you turn to help, you're not getting the help you need. And I don't know, I can't even begin to explain the way how I just feel. I can't begin to explain. All I know, I just feeling pain. I feeling emptiness. It's like a part of my life just missing. Since that, I haven't recuperated at all.
But what do you feel in your heart and in your gut? What do you feel took place that day? Do you have any beliefs or feelings of what took place that day?
Well, from what I get to understand is that one and her friend, she went to meet with one and her friend because the neighbor heard her telling somebody to meet me by the gas station. But I know she left to go to work that morning. But the little information, she didn't, well, I know by now she did not attend work, right? And she was in the company of a friend. That's all I know, but nothing else.
But do you still have faith that she's still out there alive?
Well, no, I don't think any parent would like to know their child is dead, right? And even the thought of it just makes me sick. The thought, knowing or feeling or whatever it is, it just makes me sick. So that is a place sometimes I don't like to go at all because I'm in a dark place, and when I get into that place, it's like I cannot come out because it's very painful.
I know that you said a male friend was quote-unquote linked with her disappearance according to the information. What would you like to say to that male friend of yours?
Whoever is responsible, please tell us what happened. We want to know. We need answers. Think about if it was your family who went missing, how it is you would have feel. And Shanice is my only child. I don't have anybody else. It's just Shanice and I. And my whole world just crumbled. Put yourself in my position and see how it is you would feel, and then you would know. Please come forward and say something. Say something.
What would it mean to you to finally get closure, to finally get information about Shanice after so long?
It would feel like burden lifted. Burden lifted. At least I would be able to go ahead with my life. But as for now, at a standstill because I don't know anything. All I know is what I'm feeling.
What would you say to Shanice if she could hear you right now? What would you want her to know?
I would tell her, Shanice, just find a way and come home. That I love you and I am missing you. I'm missing you dearly and I want you to come home.
Stories like these continue to inspire more families to come forward as the search for closure continues. Remember, if you'd like to share your story with us at Unspun, email us at unspun@cnc3.co.tt or call us at 800-2623. Keep it locked. After the break, we head into the world of sport with Ryan Bachoo. Welcome back to Unspun. Trinidad and Tobago is home to dozens and dozens of sporting facilities, many of which were built primarily over the last 2 decades. From national stadia to sporting centres, as quickly as these facilities went up, they've been left to crumble. That's because maintenance hasn't been a major part of any planning when constructing these buildings. The result has been a rapid deterioration of sporting facilities across the country. And with the continuous rise of sporting stadia across Trinidad and Tobago, such as the National Aquatic Centre, the Cycling Velodrome, the Racquet Centre, all of which were opened only 5 years ago, it begs the question, how do we save these facilities from a similar fate suffered by the Arthur Bolden Stadium, Larry Gomes Stadium, or Manny Ramjohn Stadium? Our sports journalist Ryan Bachoo has this special report.
At every cardinal point in Trinidad and Tobago, a stadium could be found. Northwest, the historical Hazley Crawford Stadium and the Jean Pierre Complex sitting right next to it. Down south, the Manny Ramjohn Stadium and the Brian Lara Cricket Academy. In the east, the Larry Gomes Stadium as well as the Marvin Lee Stadium and the Racquet Centre. Central, the Arthur Bolden Stadium, the Aquatic Centre and the Cycling Velodrome. In Tobago, the Dwight York Stadium. With a population of 1.4 million people, it makes TNT one of the top countries in the world with the largest number of stadia per capita. And those are just the mega ones designed for international events. Then there are the slightly smaller venues such as the Diego Martin Sporting Complex, Woodbrook Youth Facility, Shore Park, among others. Yet the state of many of these sporting facilities is despairingly deteriorated. In this special report, we will unearth the vast sums of money it takes to keep these stadia open and operational. How, as the economy fluctuates, these facilities become less of a priority. And how do we avoid the newest built stadia from suffering a similar fate as the others? We've brought together those who oversee the operations of these facilities. The results are eye-opening as they are damning. How building stadia across Trinidad and Tobago became a political playground. To understand how this country ended up with so many stadia, we must flip through almost 40 years of history. The Hazley Crawford Stadium is the country's oldest facility, opened by Prime Minister George Chambers in June 1982. It remained the country's major sporting venue for the next 19 years, until Trinidad and Tobago won the bid to host the 2001 Under-17 World Cup. Suddenly, we went from 1 stadium to 5. 4 stadia popped up across the country. They would be named after sporting icons of TNT, Larry Gomes Stadium in Malabar, Manny Ramjohn Stadium in Marabella, Arthur Bolden Stadium in Couva, and Dwight York Stadium in Bacalet.
Trinidad and Tobago has so many facilities. A sport company official told us it is virtually impossible to nail down a numerical figure on how many facilities we actually have. What we do know is that Sport Company is in charge of roughly 24 of these facilities. They classify them in 3 categories. The first category is national stadia, of which the Aquatic Centre, the Cycling Velodrome, the Brian Lara Cricket Academy, the Racquet Centre are all stadia. Then there are multi-purpose facilities such as the Hazley Crawford Stadium, Manny Ramjohn Stadium, Arthur Bolden Stadium. That's because multi-sport events can take place at these facilities, such as athletics and football. Then there are the regional and locals. Those are predominantly centres like the Woodbrook Youth Facility, Maloney Indoor Facility, the Sangre Grande Facility.
Over the last 20 years, these facilities in every category have been multiplied by different governments. Yet maintenance hardly seems to be factored into the equation.
Maintenance is the issue, right? Because these magnificent facilities can, in the blink of an eye, run down, right? And it can turn into white elephants, as they may call it. So maintenance is the key.
Jason Williams is the Chief Executive Officer of the Sport Company. He tells me the cost to keep these stadia operational and open stretches into the millions.
These facilities cost routine maintenance over $56 million every year to maintain. And that's basic maintenance. That's not even preventative maintenance, that's reactive. So you can see where the challenge is when our recurrent budget for the year is $78 million. And that's just an allocation. You're not even sure to get the $78 million. 56 out of 78 leaves 22. So you're not really anywhere in terms of maintenance.
That's roughly $466,000 every month to routinely keep these stadia operational, or $116,500 every week.
We are very reactive, unfortunately. We keep fighting fires, and we try as best as possible to keep them open, as you say. So today or tomorrow you might find there's a leak in one of the facilities. We try to fix that. Again, it comes down to the funds available, and unfortunately we don't have the funds. So it's about cash management, money management, not doing something here, but doing something here to make sure that the public can use here, or that the football team can train here, or athletics can use this facility, or swimming can use here. It's like juggling money that you don't have, just to make sure that it's open so that the public can use it.
Given the financial constraints that you have, would you say it's almost impossible to keep all of these stadia up to optimum level or up to optimum quality?
It is. They all open. They all open to some point, and we do have activities there at some point in time. So it's all operationalized, but it's not to the extent that we would want it to. It's not that, you might come to a facility, they might see some seats need changing, or you might see some, and it comes down to priority. Would you rather change a few seats or make sure that the track is ready for a competition? You focus on the track. Do you want to fix a bleacher versus have the field in order for a World Cup qualifying game? So it comes down to what their priorities are and what we can do with little resources.
Are some stadia given priority as opposed to others, especially in a year where we have an Olympic Games and perhaps the Maniram John Stadium may not be in use as much as the Hazley Crawford Stadium?
Yes, we would have to prioritize, because we look at the facility that is being used to a greater extent than others. We look at the facility that would have the major championships and the activities. For 2020, 2021, we know the priority would be Olympic Games. It's unfortunate that people may think that we're picking and choosing what we want to do, but given the constraints that we have, it will be nice if we can focus on all, but it's impossible given the financial restrictions.
But how did we get here? To answer that question, I've turned to the chairman of the subcommittees on facilities, HSSE and projects, Hayden Mitchell.
Ryan, you have to understand that with just like boards or companies or governments, when boards or companies or governments change, the strategic direction changes. And what happens then is probably the board in the last administration would have put something in place, but then you have a new government coming in, right? And their whole strategic direction has changed.
Mitchell tells me the only way to move forward is to produce a holistic plan that transcends all governments.
What we are doing now at our board level is putting together a long-term plan for the upgrade of all the stadia that falls under sport, right? That is a project that I'm heading. And really it is to modernize as far as possible, because some of the assets are old, but there are some aspects that you can modernize. And so regardless of who is in power, whether Hayden Mitchell's here or Douglas Camacho is the chairman or whoever comes in, we want to leave a long-term plan so it's easy for them to just follow whoever comes in after us, because that is the main problem.
But Mr. Mitchell, as chairman of the subcommittee for facilities, how do we ensure that facilities like the one we're in, the National Cycling Velodrome or the Aquatic Centre where we were, or the newly built Racket Centre, how do we ensure that these facilities don't become like the Larry Gomes Stadium, like the Maniram John Stadium?
Right, so I'll use tennis as an example, right? Because right now we are getting it certified as an ITF bronze level facility. That speaks to a standard in facilities. So that is also a marketing tool for Trinidad and Tobago. So when it is we go out and we advertise that Trinidad and Tobago has an ITF certified bronze level facility, when people come down to Trinidad, they expect a certain standard, right? With all these international associations, whether it is FINA, whether it is cycling, UCI, whether it is ITF, those standards have to be met, or else you're going to lose your certification.
It's an extraordinary balancing act for officials, and as governments have come and gone, these stadia have been part of their legacy, in many instances left to deteriorate.
Thanks so much for joining us on this edition of Unspun. We hope to see you 2 Sundays from now when we're hoping to bring you a fresh batch of stories that matter to you. If you have any story tips for Unspun, please ensure you drop us an email at unspun@cnc3.co.tt or call us at 800-CNC3. Until then, have a good one. And remember, be the change you want to see in the world.